Williamsburg. Who's been to Colonial Williamsburg? Who hasn't been to Colonial Williamsburg? You guys need to go to Colonial Williamsburg because it is just magical. It is absolutely magical. It's all about this sort of thing. But what makes it critical, and also what I think yours makes critical, when it's something that's meaningful to you that gets connected to, that really works. That's really what works. So like Colonial Williamsburg, I talked to Thomas Jefferson. I saw Washington review his troops. So that meaningful connection is really, really important. In your talk, the meaningful connection was the stone of Scone. It was stolen from my Scottish ancestors.
I know, it's true. It's unfortunate.
Thank you. We got another.
I'll just throw in a comment again. I really appreciate this because I think what we often lose sight of in this industry is the audience needs to have a good time. And so thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
All right, I'm in the back of the room. Does anybody else have any more questions, comments? All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're kind of going to be in the between. Nice job, Michael. All right, up next we have Bob Bonador. You're on deck. Yes, yours is on, and then I keep turning mine on. Okay, so you're starting right at 11:15. I got 11:14 here. So with the 12 minutes, I'll give you the 2-minute warning, and yeah, like we can do formal questions, or if you have more to talk about, you can take the 2 minutes for you. I'm sure you know, you've been doing this. People like to talk. Yes, they do. Yeah, I don't know about me, they like to talk about you, they like to talk about that, they like to talk about that. So it's okay.
I don't know when I'll introduce you, but I'll ask you to stand up and wave. All right.
All right, everybody, please welcome Bob Bonador.
Thanks, Holly. Thanks, everyone, for being here this morning. So that's me, Bob Bonador from Milwaukee, and just got to start out with some humor. Let you read it. It seems to describe my childhood, and so I was one of those kids in the room, was like not listening, staring off into space, and I haven't got a medal yet, but maybe someday. So this is where I'm going to work in 2.5 years. So we're very excited. It's groundbreaking. Things are going up, and it's just, I don't know. I think I've told this before, but of course they didn't consult me on the art here. This is due north right here where the sun's setting. And Milwaukee's, light pollution is not that bad, you can tell, but no, Katie, the project manager, she goes, we were gonna call you, but we didn't have enough time. They had to get it ready for some presentation. I go, Katie, don't worry about it. It looks nice. It's a beautiful picture. So this is just an artistic rendering of the inside. It's gonna be like our planetarium here. It's gonna be flat with removable seats, almost a 60-foot dome. And so it's just, one of the big things that we're gonna do is, the reason we have a flat planetarium is we want to do events. This is Strassenburg in Rochester. And of course, special events are good moneymaker, and we all have to survive. So that is part of the reason to do this. And I really had to kind of push for this design. It was, you know, a fight with, not a fight, but it's like, you know, they wanted to have a slope floor and everything. I just said, no, let's do this. And they finally said, okay. So we're going to be in the Deer District near the new Fiserv. We're not moving far. We're moving like a half mile. That's about how far we're going. So my paper today, Artistic Universe. Don't ask me why we came up. This is a show that's going to be available next spring. We all deal with art. I mean, we use art in our show. We're always doing art. So I thought, oh, this would be just a fun thing to do, just blend art and science together. And so the goal of the show is to engage, educate, and inspire planetarium audiences on the beauty of both art and science. And we tend to think, you know, that they're so separate. And I don't really think they are. I'm not an artist, and I'm not a true PhD scientist, but I believe in this, and so this is part of the reason we're doing it. So you're going to see some of these in the talk coming up here, some of the scenes we have, and I'm also going to ask you if you have any ideas for the show, because we're really doing this show kind of backwards. We're just making some scenes, which you'll see tonight, by the way, and then we're going to write the script. So I'll talk more about these 5 topics. We'll do a little bit of history. This was fun to learn. You know, evolution, you probably heard of pareidolia. We have to connect things. So we developed both art and science to survive, literally. We had to connect to nature and what's around us and communicate that. So we did it through both art and science. And we're not going to get big on but we'll do a little history in the show. And this is going to be the opening scene, and this came out of the SEPA conference a few months back. And someone said, are you going to do anything with STEM and STEAM? So we're going to put the A in STEM. And Terry Spears, our creator, stand up, Terry. This is Terry. He makes the magic happen. And he built a great opening scene where, you know, you have STEM and you do it, and then art comes in, and then a rocket blast off. So it's just a cool opening scene. And then we're going to dispel the myth. How many thought that they're born with either aptitude for science or art? We get channeled that way sometimes, and that's just a myth, right? Now, we get into the story, but if people tragically lose part of their brain, yes, they will develop more art or science, but we're born with both, and we can do both. So we're going to have a scene where we dispel this myth about the brain, the left hemisphere versus the right hemisphere. Okay, because we use both sides equally. When we do art or science, the entire brain is used. So this is a scene that we're going to do. You're going to see it tonight in the dome. So this is a quote by Neil deGrasse Tyson, and you know, Van Gogh didn't just paint this; he painted what he felt, right? And this is a true scene. The Moon and Venus in June of 1889. And you probably maybe read about this. So we're going to fly into this painting tonight. So come see us. And Terry just did a wonderful job on that. That's just a clip from it. All right, and then we're going to do a thing on, we haven't developed this artistically yet, but how many have heard of this? Raise your hand. If you haven't heard of this, we want to do something fun with this. Think of the first song, right? Art, music. Mozart wrote the melody. He didn't do the lyrics, but so there's so many of these. I searched on Google. There's just all these cute things about science, but done with the poem and the twinkle music. So I'll let you just read those. And there's tons of them online. It's just fun to do. So this is a thing we did. We just filmed this. And how many have heard of Silent Sky? A lot of you, okay. It's a play about the Harvard computers who discovered the Cepheid variables, Henrietta Leavitt, Annie Jump Cannon, who gave us a spectral class, and this is a very famous play that's been out for about 10 years, and Lauren Gunderson, I was able to contact her. She's done, by the way, a lot of plays on science, and from the women perspective, how they're often overlooked in a lot of this, and of course, this is a classic astronomy example. So we filmed this, and you'll see it tonight, it was quite a work. I'm not a stage director, but we got it together and did it, so we'll talk more about that tonight, and of course, Annie Jump Cannon gave us the "Oh Boy, Enough Grade Kills Me" mnemonic. She gave us lots of things. Anyway, you all know about that. So other scenes we're contemplating for the show, I mean, obviously using art to teach science is a way to do it, and just the opposite, using science to teach art, which there's so many examples of all of that. So again, if you have ideas, come see Terry or I today. We might put Shakespeare in the play just because so many people are familiar with Shakespeare. He's got so many astronomical references. And this is just one from Julius Caesar on the North Star. There's, of course, all kinds of famous paintings out there of Vermeer, the astronomer. So we don't know exactly how this is all going to come together. Maybe we do a big collage of famous paintings that involve, we have this Starry Night thing, but maybe we do more. Toulouse in France had many paintings. This is right before photography became available. He's got many things. Of course, people are doing it today. Scientists making art. This is a young astrophysicist and artist. And I just found these online. But again, how we're going to pull this together, we don't know. And then thinking of doing a poetry contest for kids, and then film them bringing in the winners and have artists draw their poem and work with it, and then film it to, because our audiences are very family, a lot of kids, so we want to involve a poetry contest for kids. This is one I did in Minneapolis some 30 years ago, but it was really good. I mean, it was great to read it. And of course, I think some of these kids, the parents love to help, don't they? And this one, I don't know. And then we could do something, is it art or is it science? Because we all know about it, right? So the pillars of creation, and someone just kind of took it and put a planet in there, and there's nothing wrong with this unless they're trying to sell it or something, or the fraud is intentional. Sometimes it's not, they're just making a beautiful picture. But we can teach in the show the difference, to look for what's real and what's not. And I'm going to end it with Feynman. I don't know if we'll put Feynman in the show, but I just love his quote about a flower. And I may have, oops, there, it's coming up. I got so many flower pictures. Okay. The beauty of a flower. I have a friend who's an artist, and he's sometimes taking a view of which I don't agree with very well. He'll hold up a flower and say, look how beautiful it is, and I'll agree. And he says, you see, as an artist, I can see beautiful this, but you as a scientist, you take it all apart, and it becomes a dull thing. So this is an artist talking to Feynman, a scientist. And then Feynman says, I think he's kind of nutty. And so I don't know how to do this, but there's just different, science gives us so much more, right, to look at things. We can go out in nature and it's beautiful and we can do it, but, we can go beyond that, and that's all Feynman is saying. And so this is kind of the gist of the show. It's going to be very general. We got to make it good for families, kids. That's why we're doing the twinkle thing, but have some fun with that, a way to teach how stars work. And where am I in time? 1:20. What? 1:20 left. Oh, 1:20 left. So any other ideas? Mindy? What? Oh, yeah, Escher? Yeah.
I can come around with the mic.
Okay. She said MC Escher, if you notice, his art is very wild, shall we say?
Sorry if this comes out a little wonky in my thought process, but you showed the cave paintings, and people always talk about, they were communicating ideas of how the stars were moving and when things were, that kind of thing. One of my favorite things about the cave paintings, though, from a humanistic perspective, are the hand impressions, because there's no scientific reason that they should have done that other than to just simply say, I was here.
Okay.
And I think that that's one of the most beautiful things about humans is that we want to share, like he was talking, our stories, and we want to connect through those generations and eons out. So that would be cool.
If you can send me that, or I'll
Sure.
get your ad. That's a great idea. I like that.
I agree.
Hey, Bob, I want to go back to that Feynman quote.
Yeah.
The concept of the disparity between artists and science. Science is cold, art is warm.
Yeah. Yeah, we want to dispel that.
That's
right?
a big deal because it resonates with people, and you can actually then change the world a little bit because there's kind of an anti-science vibe going on.
Yep.
And so if people come in the show and they say that scientists aren't these lab coat, cold, heart-blooded creatures, that science can actually enhance the beauty of what you see, that as the essence of the show gives me goosebumps.
Yeah, that's the essence of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
and to point out things
That
like
would be
that.
spectacular.
To get rid of that, you know, we're cold.
Right.
We're some of the most, go to the hospitality suite, we're some of the more warm and friendly people,
Colorful.
you know.
We're colorful.
All right, coming around.
Kind of going along with that, the pillars of creation image you showed, the actual one, not the other one. I mean, that's not true color imagery. That is art in itself.
Right.
In emphasizing, using science to emphasize aspects of the thing you're looking at. I mean, you can render that any way you want, and they chose to render it in a way that's beautiful. So it's not.
Right.
That's as much art as
Yeah.
anything else.
And that's a thing we want to get across. NASA using art to defend what they, or do what they do.
They're doing a real good job of it lately.
I mean, if you're old enough like me, you've seen NASA just transform, right? They used to be very kind of stoic, and NASA's turned out to this PR marketing machine, and they just really know how to make it cool, which is great, which we do. Dan?
I'll be quick. I just want to say we had a very interesting research lecture in a new neuroscience series we have with Dr. Indra Viscontas, who looks into basically the science of neuroaesthetics and the science of why we like to look at what we like. And so that can be an interesting spin on it too of how science now tells us why we appreciate art.
Okay, cool.
All right, everybody. Now, if anyone has more suggestions for Bob, I recommend finding him after our session. So thank you, Bob. Round of applause.
Thanks, everyone.
Coming up next, we have Destiny Thomas.
We got a couple. I think you got like 2 minutes or something before you have to start. So.
Our next speaker is Destiny Thomas. Take it away, Destiny.
All right. Thank you, Holly. How's everyone doing today? Good. Excellent. Excellent. Good morning. I'm here from the Cleveland Museum of Natural History. And just like Holly mentioned, my name is Destiny Thomas. Now, I do have a picture up here to start. And I just want to remind everybody of something that happened on April 8th. Does anybody remember? It was a big deal. So a lot going on. It kind of looks like a black hole. We get that a lot with this picture. How many people got to enjoy the total solar eclipse in April? Very nice. Excellent. Excellent. So my presentation here is all about the eclipse season for the Cleveland Museum of Natural History. And so we were fortunate to be within that path of totality, and we got totality for nearly 4 minutes. And so it was spectacular. With that, we were able to really bump up the programming that we did, get everyone excited who was regional, and also have people visit from all over the country. Just a little bit about me for everyone in the room that I haven't had a chance to meet just yet. I joined the Natural History Museum back in 2019, and since then I've been able to deliver science programming to over 5,000 people. And so it also lists a couple other things that I've been able to accomplish since working at the museum. And one of my biggest accomplishments was actually joining this tripod of a team. I coined it, we're the tripod, because there's 3 of us. And so you have me there on the right side, but you also have Monica Marshall on the left, and then our supervisor, senior astronomer Nick Anderson there. And one of the major aspects of the eclipse season was our public engagement and all the programming that we did. In terms of our public shows within the planetarium, we actually hosted 2 shows within a 6-month period. So the first show was called Eclipse Fever, where the goal was to get people excited and remind them of the 2017 eclipse. And then the second show was called Meeting Totality, which really added on to all the content that we put in that first show. Now, we also had something for the school programs called Eclipse Extravaganza. We were able to create something that was tailored for K through 8 graders. And so we would approach the program based on where the students were at, and they got to gain that knowledge as to why total solar eclipses happen, why they're so rare, and why it's exciting. And of course, we did a lot of outreach as well. So a little bit more about Eclipse Fever. We ran this one from October to January. We had nearly 11,000 visitors come to see this particular show. A couple of the main elements include things like talking about celestial geometry, talking about some of the different visual things you see during totality, the moments leading up to it. So we have some scripts here about Bailey's beads, the diamond ring effect. We also made sure to talk about proper viewing methods. So that was a really important thing throughout our programming season. And then for Meeting Totality here, this was January to April. Now, with Eclipse Fever, it was more about building that foundation, getting people to really understand why this is happening, and then Meeting Totality, the scripts with this program was much more immersive. So it was really simulating what totality would feel like. And this had even more visitors. We had 15,000 people get to see this show. So the closer we got to April 8th, the more media requests we received, the more visitors we got to the museum. So back to that safety and proper viewing methods, we wanted to make sure we had everybody prepared. Everyone had the proper equipment that they needed. We wanted to make sure that we were able to kind of debunk any misconceptions about what people were able to do visually. And this guy, he's over-prepared, right? So he has everything that he needs. Now, we did have some people who weren't as prepared as this individual, so we also gave other people a little bit of insight into what they could have to enjoy the eclipse. So we did have our solar eclipse shades that we had made by Rainbow Symphony with our CM&H branding on them. We were able to give these out throughout the 6-month period leading up to April 8th. We also had boxes of them accessible during the day as well. We had welding masks as well. Some people preferred this if they already had reading glasses on, and it makes for a really awesome picture as well. So we had these available. We did have a couple of scopes. We had 3 scopes out. So this is one of the 3 here. So that's myself and Monica Marshall. We had our 8-inch Dobsonian Newtonian reflector, and we put a glass white light filter on the aperture so that a person looking through the eyepiece would be able to see the photosphere of the sun. So we had that one available, and this scope was our newest toy that we acquired. So this is a Coronado. Specifically, this one is the 70mm Solar Max Series 3. So with the optical design, it does have this double stacked design to it. It's a refractor. It allows us to have ultra high contrast views of the sun. Essentially, it allows us to see the chromospheric level of the sun's atmosphere. Now, I recently was able to capture a picture of the type of view you get with this telescope, and we also use it currently. So since the weather is still pretty decent, every day at high noon, we do bring this telescope out so that guests can do solar viewing. So you can see here, being able to see the chromosphere, you can see all kinds of features. So you can see solar prominences. We have a few off to the left there. You can see the filaments, which are those dark stripes that almost look like scratches or veins. And you can also see a bit of granulation. So a lot of people, they waited in line during the day of the eclipse to look through this telescope, and they were completely blown away. And so they would even say it was worth the wait. So a lot of people, they don't have access to this type of telescope or technology, so it was really great to make it accessible to as many people as possible. Now, leading up to the eclipse, the actual weekend, we bumped up programming even more. And so the Thursday before, we host something called Think and Drink with the Extinct. So we have these periodically, pretty fun title there. And so we have these periodically at our museum, about one every quarter. So we tailored this one to the eclipse, and we called it Lights Out. And so this is for our 21 and up crowd. We do have a cash bar, we have trivia, we have live animal shows, and of course for this one, we had the eclipse-themed planetarium shows happening. Now for the days before the eclipse, Saturday and Sunday, we made these days more family-oriented, so we called these Solar Fest. We still had planetarium shows going on, solar viewing in the courtyard. We had talks at our moon rock that we have on loan from NASA. It's from the Apollo 12 mission. And we had a lot of hands-on eclipse-themed activities. Now here comes Monday morning. So we coined the name of the event Total on the Oval. So in Cleveland, we have what's called University Circle. Essentially, it's this area where we have a number of our major museums kind of side by side circling over this big patch of grass, this huge park called Wade Oval. And so we decided to call it Total on the Oval. We had approximately 5,000 individuals join us for the day, some from Ohio, some from other states, even people from other countries. We had different media outlets present. We had presentations by all of our astronomers. We had solar viewing at our observation station, and we even had an interview with a NASA astronaut. So these are just a couple of pictures here just to show how many people were able to join us here. The weather turned out fantastic. So at 6 a.m. in the morning, the day of, we were required to arrive very early for media coverage, and it was raining. It was raining a lot. And so my coworker, Monica, she turns to me while we're trying to get in the garage, and she's like, "It's 6 a.m. and it's raining already. What's going to happen today? This is not eclipse weather." And so I told her, let's just wait till like 9, 10 o'clock. We see what it looks like. The clouds, they went away, the rain stopped, and this was actually one of the best days in terms of weather we had in like weeks. So it was actually perfect. This is just a couple of pictures from some of those hands-on crafts we had available for people. It really was an all hands-on-deck type of event. So on that left picture, we had staff members from other departments at our Natural History Museum who also came in their Eclipse logo t-shirts, and they helped out, and it was fantastic. And of course, you can't have an eclipse without donuts, right? So we did have the donut truck as well. And then this here is the image of totality for us here in Cleveland. There was a really big prominence kind of almost at 6 o'clock in this image here. You could actually see it without a telescope, so it was phenomenal once we did get to totality. And once we were at totality, you can see 360 all around the horizon, that beautiful sunset glow. You can hear the crickets chirping. We have coyotes at our museum, so they also started to howl. You could see some of the street lights coming on. You can actually hear the songbirds cease their chirping. You could feel the temperature drop. You could feel the wind pick up. So it was a very surreal experience for nearly 4 minutes. And so it really was phenomenal. All the work we put into the season really paid off. And so some key takeaways, some of our successes there was a lot of team collaboration. So we couldn't make it happen without working together. We had a lot of skill development as well with the completion of a number of our shows, our programming that we put together, community partnerships that we made with so many people with the programming that we did, and also just leading up to the eclipse and all of the media coverage as well. Now, lessons learned, adaptability. We learned that being able to pivot was very important, and so we would never know when we would have to pivot. We'd get some information last minute, and we would just have to talk to one another and decide, okay, what's the best course of action? So being able to adapt really helped us during this season. Also allocating our resources properly in terms of our staff, and also time was very key. And also work-life balance, because we had 12-hour days and very long, some people, other people as well, yes. So it was a lot going on during that time. Being able to lean on one another as a team really helped us to get through it and maintain that work-life balance. And a little bit about that media coverage. So we had over 180 unique media pieces. So this included radio, TV, some web pieces, some print pieces, all kinds. So I just have a couple pictures here showing our team in different instances where they were doing some of their interviews. And then there's the dream team right there. So this was after the eclipse, and we could all exhale a little bit. And it really, really paid off. It was a great experience that so many people will truly remember for years to come. All right, and so thank you for listening. I have my email for the museum there, my LinkedIn, my social media that I do a little science communication with. So feel free to contact me any kind of way you'd like. But in the meantime, thank you all for your time and listening to my presentation.
Thank you so much, Destiny. And as somebody who was just barely clouded out, I must say I'm very jealous. So congratulations on an amazing, amazing eclipse experience. We are about out of time for this section, so if anybody does have questions or comments for Destiny, please find her after the paper session. Coming up on deck, we have Madeline Shepley.
Which one's yours?
Alrighty, everybody. Next up, please welcome Madeline Shepley.
All right, thank you so much. As was said, my name is Madeline Shepley. I am the director at the Strickler Planetarium, just kind of up the roadish at Olivet Nazarene University in Bourbonnais, Illinois. And what I want to talk to you today is about something cool that I got to do last spring and with one of the history classes at the university I work at. But first, I want to talk to you and give an idea of where I got the idea for the visualizations I'll be talking about. So back when I was a baby graduate student at Ball State University, I started to learn that planetariums, contrary to what I'd really always thought of, could actually be used for more than just purely astronomy. Because I'd grown up in Northwest Indiana, I'd gone many, many times to the Adler Planetarium and enjoyed all that stuff. But then I had all these incredible experiences where I learned that I could do other things. The first of which, I had gone to the GLPA Indiana State Meeting in 2022, And I had heard actually Melinda O'Malley give an amazing talk about using the planetarium over a variety of school subjects. And I was like, whoa, like that's a thing? That's really cool. And then fast forward a little bit later, later in the year, I got to participate in a few different events and other projects at the Brown Planetarium at Ball State where I was in grad school. We had done this cool Poems in the Dome event where we had a bunch of people come and compose poems and do art and a lot of different other stuff related to the JWST, and I even got to present my own poem, which was really awesome since I like to write. And then I even got to, in preparation for the eclipse, I even got to look through Muncie's eclipse history, because it turned out that between 2024 and their last total eclipse, it was over 1,000 years. And I was like, wow, we were really, really unlucky. And then I was also inspired by, they have a show called The Christmas Star, which really looks into just what could have possibly been the Star of Bethlehem that gets mentioned in the Gospels in the New Testament. And I was like, that's a really cool just way of hybriding astronomy and history and religion. And so all of this, you pair that with, I wanted to make a lot more use of Strickler's Dome, because we had the usual COVID decline in attendance, and I was like, people really need to know about this unique gem that we have in this random town in Illinois. So then there was the spark for an idea. So there was this one February afternoon, or no, actually it was morning, and I was walking from my office to the planetarium, and it was uncharacteristically nice for February, and I see these students as depicted, this is a real picture, I see these students and one of my colleagues from the history department, they're just sitting out there by the planetarium discussing a book. And so I, being my natural social self, I was like, hey, what are you guys doing? And why are you guys out by the planetarium? And so my colleague Kyle, he told me that they were learning about Captain Cook's voyages and the Pacific exploration that happened in the 18th century and the Enlightenment and how all of that worked together. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. And he starts talking about how one of the things that Captain Cook did in his voyages, besides just charting a bunch of previously unknown to Europeans, this previously unknown land, was he actually did some observations of various astronomical phenomena. I think most notably, there was a transit of Venus and a transit of Mercury that he got to observe in the Pacific. And I was like, well, it would be absolutely trivial to show you that in the dome. And he's like, wait, really? That would be sick. I'm like, well, why not you bring your class to the planetarium and we can set something up? But before we get to that, perhaps a little bit more context is necessary. So if you're interested in what this class was about, it was taught by my colleague, Dr. Kyle Robinson. And in our course catalog, it's HIST 372, but that, of course, doesn't tell you much. And the title is Adventure, Science, and Taboo, Captain Cook and Europe's Pacific Enlightenment. They're really interested in this class exploring how all of these people who kind of had this scientific adventurism and how that interacted with the Enlightenment that was going on in Europe at the time, and how that affected science exploration and imperialism. And in particular, this class, Captain Cook's voyages are kind of a centerpiece because he's a famous navigator of that time. And in this world, in this time period, the Pacific in a way was like the New World. And this specific class wanted to see how contact evolved into control. But since there was an astronomy component to the voyages, we wanted to really focus on that. And what I explained to my colleague, I was like, well, planetariums are kind of like time machines and teleportation devices all in one. And so you can go back in time a few thousand years in either direction, and you can go anywhere on Earth and view a multitude of different places, even off planet. So I was like, I can easily use that to make things happen. So we had a bit of a voyage itinerary. We selected a list of different places that he visited. We didn't go to all of them, but we picked out some interesting places based on where we thought would have interesting visuals, where important stuff happened. And so we went and divided up into a few different categories. We had what I like to call his surveyor shenanigans over in Canada was part of that. Then he has his first voyage, which he visited places like Tahiti, New Zealand, Australia. And then we also have his second voyage and his third voyage. The second voyage where he goes to the Antarctic Circle, he goes to Easter Island, he goes to the other side of Canada. And then his third voyage where two of the notable things were he crosses the Arctic Circle, and then he ends up in Hawaii where he unexpectedly dies. So it turned out great, and the students and my colleague Kyle, they were just awed and flabbergasted by just how beautiful it was. But there were a few things I was like, maybe this could have gone better. The first of which was, as you can see by these two pictures here, when you pull up the specific date for the Mercury and Venus transits, Mercury and Venus are so small, and the sun is way bigger and brighter than both of those, that just sitting there in the dome, you cannot see the transit actually go across the face of the sun for either planet. And I was like, well, that's a little bit melodramatic. Like, I want them to actually see the planet go across the face of the sun. And so I was trying to think of how to deal with this, and I'm like, wouldn't it be great if we had like a telescope or something, or, you know, mimicked a telescope in order to get the view of this? And so I was talking with Waylena McCulley, and she's like, oh, you can just make a sun inset camera. It's not too terribly difficult. And after a little bit of troubleshooting and learning that their Digistar is way more versatile than I originally thought, I was able to, and it might not be super visible with my pictures, but I was actually able to get the planets to be visible. And so all we had to do was run this sun inset camera script in order to see the planets, and it was amazing. So this allowed us to magnify what we otherwise couldn't see. The other thing that I was thinking about is a lot of these places that Captain Cook visited in his voyages, a lot of my students haven't ever visited. I mean, they're completely on the other side of the world. And so I wanted to be able to give students a sense of where these places are and the scale over the surface of the Earth that these voyages span. Because Captain Cook's ships traveled many, many miles to visit all these different places. And so I wanted to be able to put that in context. But I wasn't sure a very easy way to get that to be easily visible. And step in Mike McConville and Google Earth Pro. Turns out it was a super easy fix. In Google Earth Pro, what you can do is you can put pins in various different locations around the Earth, and then you can connect the dots with them. Maybe not quite like what the mapping out the voyages of Captain Cook, but you can at least connect the places that are there. And so once you do that, you can actually export those files and really easily import them in a Digistar. And then all I had to do was click on those files in my presentation, and they appeared, just like you can see there, which was really awesome. So what's next? I really want to get into more collaborations with my colleagues. And one of the first things is I want to really work on even further refining the Captain Cook visualizations and make them a permanent fixture of that course. And additionally, we want to better organize and time out our things that we see there. That way we can maximize the amount of things that the students see when they're in the dome. And then also I have collaboration that I will hopefully get around to with my colleague Josh Riley. He's very interested in literature and talked a lot about how astronomy often comes across in literature and gets referenced. A good example of this is in War and Peace. There's a famous comet that gets mentioned, and so I want to be able to bring those things to life in the dome for the students in these classes to be able to see. So that is what I have for you guys. Thank you so much for coming to my talk.
All right, thank you, Madeline. So we are also about out of time for this section. So if anybody has questions or comments for Madeline, please find her after the paper session. And we have our very last speaker for this session. We've got Anna Green on deck. Trying to put it back as All right, everybody. The final paper presentation for the session. Please welcome Anna Green.
Thank you very much. I have a title, but for some reason it's not showing up. So, but I'm going to be talking to you today about engaging language learners in your planetarium as a dominant language user. Oh boy, that was a bunch of jargon. First of all, why do I love this topic so much? Well, once upon a time, I did my undergraduate work at the University of Illinois to be a world language teacher. So I majored in French, minored in German and vocal performance, and I got my professional educator's license and then decided I never ever wanted to be in a classroom ever again, not because of the students, but because those of you who work in school districts, I think you know why. And let's be real, it's more fun being in a planetarium. So, gonna use some language throughout the course of this presentation, and maybe not colorful language like you might expect, but what kind of language are we talking about? Well, first of all, dominant language, or DL. That is the language of highest proficiency for somebody who is multilingual. So for me, for example, my dominant language is English. Target language, that is the language that you are currently learning. And if any of you are doing Duolingo, that little owl just stalks you constantly all day. What's an L1? It is your first language. And an L2 is your second language, and L3 is your third, and so on and so forth. Meaningful language input. I don't know how many of you have seen this Eddie Izzard piece before, but it is much better when there's sound. Well, that's okay. So basically, what she's saying is that when she learned French, one of the first things she learned was how to say that the mouse is under the table, the cat's on the chair, and the monkey's in the branch on the tree. Does that sound like meaningful input? No. I mean, one day that's going to be useful, but like as she goes on to say, yeah, that's real hard for me to go to Paris and slip all that into a conversation when I'm trying to buy a ticket to ride the train. Meaningful language input has to be real world applicable. So conversational, it needs to have relevant themes. It needs to be properly modeled. So for my case, the majority of the time that I'm teaching a language in the Dome, I am teaching my native language, English, to native German speakers. So for me, I need to make sure that I'm speaking English properly, which is really hard, actually, as a native speaker to make sure that you are speaking your own language properly. And so it's something that I have to be very aware of, versus when I was teaching French or German in the classroom, those are not my L1, those are not my dominant language. And so because of that, I'm aware of the mistakes that learners are going to make. I'm aware of where they might have trouble picking something up because I had trouble picking it up. And with English, I just picked up what I learned from my parents, the playground, wherever. So it's something to really be aware of if you have, for example, English as a second language students in your Dome. It needs to be comprehensible. Are you using appropriate vocabulary? Are you modifying? If they aren't understanding, are you circumlocuting? So finding another way to explain what you are talking about. That being said, you don't want to baby them. They're not going to learn anything if you don't push them a little bit. So a little bit of advanced content to hook them in and make them think is always a good thing. So I am going to give you a little bit of content warning here. If you are from the United States and you grew up in the 80s and 90s, this next commercial may trigger you, although it's probably not going to have sound, so maybe it won't trigger you as badly. Who remembers Muzzy?
Je suis le grand Muzzy.
Je suis la jeune fille. Yes, that's French those children are speaking. And no, they're not French, they're American, says the lovely British woman. So yeah, so that was the Muzzy commercial. I had the Muzzy tapes to learn German when I was a child, and I learned 0 German from those tapes. Why? Because you're not getting any feedback on your output. One of the keys to learning a language, and one of the reasons that, at least for me, I have a hard time with Duolingo, is I'm not getting, in that moment, realistic feedback on what my output is. So you can get all the input you want. I could sit there all day and watch Japanese language TV, and I'm not going to learn the language because I'm not getting feedback on what I would maybe respond to the TV. Come on, we all talk to the TV at some point. So there needs to be useful language output with feedback, and that's something that we can all do in our domes. Now, useful language output with feedback. The target language acquisition requires this feedback, and you need to be modeling it correctly. Now, that doesn't mean calling them out if they make a mistake. That's the fastest way to turn off a language learner, and they're never going to speak again. The best thing that you can do is if somebody says something and it's not quite grammatically correct or they use the wrong vocabulary, model that back to them in your answer. So if they ask you a question, you model it back with the proper phrasing. You can repeat what they said in the correct way and then elaborate on that. But that way they're hearing it. And they still may make that same mistake 10 dozen more times, but every time they hear it modeled correctly, eventually it will click. And you may even get to witness them self-correct, which is really cool. So, got to manage that content and expectations. You need to know your language learner's abilities. This is where having a pre-visit questionnaire comes in extremely handy. So, you want to ask things like, how long have you been learning the language? What variant of the language? So, example for me, being in Germany, did you learn American English or British English? Because if you learn British English, you're learning new vocab today. I don't know what those words mean in British English. I try, I'm getting better at it. Do you have any concerns? Is there anything you're worried about? It's scary to speak a new language with a native speaker. It's terrifying. You think they're going to judge you. You don't know if you're going to understand them. So letting them tell you what their concerns are so that you can be sensitive to those needs while in the dome is also a huge bonus for building trust with that class. And that goes along with the question of, is there anything you'd like the presenter to be aware of as well? You want to ask them, do you think you're going to learn anything new about STEM-related facts? Do you think you'll learn new vocabulary? What do you hope to achieve or gain from the experience? And some of them put nothing because, you know, they're too cool for school. And on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being not very excited at all and 10 being very excited, how much are you looking forward to your planetarium visit in English? Then we go into working with them, taking all those things into account. And for beginning language learners, providing that content in advance. Give them a leg up. This is scaffolding. This is basic classroom 101. The more they see something, the more they can build off of it. So if you give them that vocabulary in advance, they're more likely to stay paying attention to you because, oh, I heard that word already. I don't remember what it means. Okay, how does she just use it in context? That's right, that's what that word means. So give them a little chance to prepare and the teachers to prepare with them. And encourage those target language only interactions. So with the beginners, I like to allow a little bit for their native language as well because this is totally new content. You don't learn astronomy content in the classroom. I know because I had to learn all German astronomy content on the job. There was no class that taught me that. Support their circumlocution, give them wait time. I know it is so uncomfortable to sit there and not talk. Yeah, makes me uncomfortable, but that little bit of extra time might actually get you an answer from a student who wouldn't normally answer. They just need that little bit of extra time for the gears in their mind to click. Watch your speed. I know that I tend to speak very quickly, and so I need to make sure that I'm speaking at an appropriate speed. Unfortunately, I love puns, but this is not the level to use puns. They're not going to get it. They're probably going to pick up some bad patterns of speech. Stick to a proper word choice. Avoid slang. That can come later. When you're working with the advanced users, because the advanced users are going to crave the slang. Now they want to know, how do I sound like a native speaker my age? You can start using the slang, appropriate slang with them. Throw in the jokes and puns. Pay attention to things like false cognates. So that's when you have a word that sounds like something in your dominant language that also means something in the other language, but they are not the same thing. And so paying attention to that to catch the language learner to ensure that they're using the proper use of that word. Still support circumlocution, and at this point, target language only. I'm sorry, I don't understand you when you're speaking your L1. What was that again? They're at the point where they can do that, and they have enough to circumlocute. So it pushes them, it frustrates them, but they do it, and they do get involved, especially if you're talking about something like the environment and climate change. That is the most I've ever gotten discussion out of a language learner, is when they got to talk about climate change, because that's so real for them right now. And that goes back into that appropriate content as well, and usable content. Be aware of dialects. We have lots and lots of dialects here in North America, and as someone who learned Parisian French and then went to Quebec, whew. But yeah, I need to be aware that I use colloquialisms from both California and the Midwest when I speak English, and I need to be aware that there's a very good chance that a German speaker is not going to understand what I am talking about. So the impact of the accent on a language learner is also important to keep in mind, and that goes with any language, of course. And just to kind of put this into context, I asked my English-speaking friends all over the world, what do you call soft drinks besides soft drinks? That's the list I came up with. Yeah, skosh also means a little bit. So yeah, just totally different words and names from all over the globe that you might hear. So this is one of those things where you can ask your students, hey, are you following me right now? Are you understanding? Because if they learned one of the UK words, like I'm not going to call it fizzy pop, I call it soda. And then comes feedback, bum, bum, bum. But you're not going to get better if you don't know how it went for them. So ask them, how were you able to follow with this particular dialect and accent? Did you learn any new STEM facts? Basically going back to that pre-visit survey and seeing how the answers change. And giving them a chance to let you know what they liked and didn't like. I got a lot of positive feedback of the last English course that I did. Better than expected. It was fire. That one made my week. Some unknown US American words, but I was still able to follow very well. It's nice to interact with a moderator in a real life situation. Yeah, I learned new facts related to STEM subjects about physics and related to the universe, which was interesting because we did an ecology show, so I'm not... I guess we did a little bit with stars at the end because they really wanted it, but yeah, so it was good for me to know that they did learn things. Now, keeping in mind the one person who said that they enjoyed interacting with the moderator, oops, turn around, this means I didn't communicate well enough with them because there was another one that said interact more with the students. So if somebody's saying that I interacted great with them and somebody's saying that I didn't, which means that I didn't make it clear enough that they should feel welcome to join the conversation, or something wasn't clicking there between the two of us. Also, one of the complaints was that it was really warm inside the planetarium, and it really, really was. It was like 30-something degrees Celsius in there, and it was like a sauna. So can't control that one. It had nothing to do with language, but it was a valid point. We got a better air conditioner after that. So. I am about out of time, but it does work in all domes. I find of all the domes that we've used in Berlin, we have 2 large domes, a small dome, and 3 mobile domes because we like domes. And I have found that the mobile dome has been the easiest for me. It enables me to get literally on eye level with the students. We're all on the floor. We're all together in a big group, and there's something that feels safe and comfortable about that versus sitting in a 307-seat planetarium where I can't see them, they can't see me, I'm a disembodied voice. And it makes it a more trusting and safe environment to experiment with that new language. So I'm guessing I don't have time for questions, so we have a break. So come find me if you want to know more, and I will talk to you about nerdy language stuff all day long. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anna. All right, everybody. It is about time for lunch and state meetings. So if anybody needs any scheduling help, I am here for that. We can look at some schedules. And again, feel free to find Anna for more questions and comments. Thank you very much for attending Poster Session 1A.